When we work out, our muscles need recovery, but just how much recovery time is gonna give me the most benefit? And what about recovery weeks? Yes, I'm talking about 1 or 2 week recoveries and how they can be absolutely advantageous in seeing results. So about 4 or 5 years ago, I was completely burnt out of exercise. Something I have loved my entire life since I grew up watching my mom teach aerobics. I was completely burnt out. I didn't want to do it anymore, so I quit. I literally quit. I walked every single day instead. So looking back, I actually just took 4 recovery weeks. But what I saw, I was absolutely fascinated. All of a sudden, I was losing inches. I lost 7 inches in 4 weeks. My bowels were back on track. I was no longer exhausted. I felt really good. I eventually was even able to get off my autoimmune medication. But why was that? And that's when I started researching recovery and how important recovery is. It can absolutely be the missing component. If you're exercising and not seeing results, recovery might be the ticket. First, let's talk about why muscles need recovery. So when muscles undergo the stress of strength training, they experience tiny little micro tears, totally natural and totally normal. Then the body sends in these inflammatory markers to repair and strengthen those muscle fibers. And this happens anywhere from 24 to 48 hours after a strength training workout. So if you don't give your body recovery, you're disrupting that recovery process. And when you do that, you end up in a state of chronic inflammation. So to help your body repair, you recover that muscle group. You can also, eat some protein, stay well hydrated, and walk to really help your body repair itself. So muscles minimum need about 48 hours in between strength training groups. If you're doing lower intensity exercise, maybe yoga, maybe some very low intensity Pilates, 24 hours might do the trick. If you are experiencing a lot of soreness, this is called DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, happens between 24 and 48 hours after your workout. I recommend a 72-hour recovery before you get back into strength training. And when we are talking about recovery, it doesn't mean sedentary. Recovery simply means you're walking, you're hydrating, you're eating good nutrition like protein. So making sure you get in that recovery so you're not constantly disrupting the recovery process. Now, in our weekly schedule, what we do is we build in these recovery days. For example, when you are strength training 3 times a week, we do this Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If you are strength training with our 4 times a week schedule, Monday we do lower body. Tuesday we do upper body and abs. We take a full recovery on Wednesday, which is your walking, and then Thursday we go back to lower body, and Friday we go back to upper body and abs. So you see how the muscle groups were split up, so they got anywhere from 48 to 72 hours of recovery in between. So if you're not applying that recovery time, you end up in a state of chronic inflammation. And this is exactly where I was 4 or 5 years ago, thinking that doing more was going to give me benefits when actually scaling back and doing less is what really moved the needle for me. So that recovery is so important. Now let's talk about recovery weeks. Oh, this is where it gets good. So recovery weeks, I know a lot of us think immediately, like, I'm gonna lose all the progress I made if I take a week off, if I take 2 weeks off, if I take 3 weeks off. I actually train recovery weeks 2 or 3 weeks, and then I train 5 or 6 weeks. And I'm gonna give you all the exercise science behind that here in a minute. But in your recovery weeks, it's important that, again, you're moving, you're walking, you're stretching, you're foam rolling. For me, I do a lot more walking. I do a lot more stretching, just, because of time budgets. When I take the strength training out, I have a little bit more time to apply those things. I will also go to a sauna. Maybe I'll go to a hot Pilates class. So those recovery weeks aren't sedentary weeks. They are just continuing to move your body in a different way. And the benefits, the benefits. Okay, so you have restoration of your glycogen stores in muscles and liver, repair of that microscopic muscle damage that we talked about, regulation of hormonal balance, including cortisol and testosterone levels. Here's a little tidbit about cortisol. Cortisol is not a bad thing. It is bad when it is chronically elevated, when it stays elevated. So when you take those recovery weeks, it really helps your system regulate those. Recovery week is also going to improve your immune function. And believe it or not, in a recovery week, you don't lose any cardiovascular benefits. Now, beyond 2 weeks, you start to lose those cardiovascular benefits. So how do you know when it's time to take a recovery week? I always say, listen to your body. Usually, I recommend a recovery week every 4 to 6 weeks, but it might be different if you're seeing some of these signs. If you're feeling inflammation or achy joints, progress has slowed or halted, that's where I was, no progress seen at all, and I knew I had to do something different. If you've got mental fatigue or burnout, if you've got neural fatigue, so here's what neural fatigue is. When you're doing high stress workouts, they can lead to neural fatigue, which affects the nervous system's ability to effectively recruit muscle fibers, which can result in a temporary decrease in muscular strength and endurance until adequate recovery occurs. And the adequate recovery might mean a week or 2 weeks of recovery. Also, if you're enduring a lot of shaking when you work out. So muscle shaking isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's showing that your muscles are adapting and that they're activating in the exercise. Usually it happens towards the end of a workout when your muscles are getting close to fatigue or fatiguing. It could also mean that your nervous system is exhausted. Some nervous system exhaustion is something that you will feel. And if you are not recovered an hour or two of a workout, that could be your nervous system talking back to you. Muscle shaking could also be due to lack of electrolytes like sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium, or coming into a workout dehydrated. So you want to make sure that you're hydrating hours and days before your workouts. It could just be that muscle fatigue and complete depletion. And what do you mean by that? Is your muscles rely on glycogen or stored carbs for energy. And as that glycogen depletes, muscles struggle to contract effectively. So you could be shaking because you didn't show up to the workout with energy stores or hydration. The way to reduce that shaking is to either progressively increase your workout load, or taking those recovery weeks, recovery days, and then of course, fueling your body properly. While consistent training is really important for you to see results, as you've probably learned throughout this episode, periods of recovery are equally important. But the biggest question I get is, will I lose my progress? And the short answer is no. Taking a week or 2 weeks off from exercise is unlikely to lead to significant loss of progress, especially if you've planned that recovery in. Now, while some research decreases or deloads during a recovery week, oftentimes a recovery week eliminates all strength training and HIIT type workouts where you're not spiking your heart rate. And these workouts are completely replaced by walking and or stretching. And this is what I recommend in your recovery weeks, where you are not deloading, you are completely removing that type of exercise and you're replacing it with walking and stretching and deep breathing and just, daily movement. But let's rely on the exercise science and the research. So there was a study that had participants training a continuous 24 weeks. Then the other group cycled 6 weeks of training with 3 weeks of recovery. At the end of those 24 weeks, the end results were identical. So think about that. 24 weeks continuous training or 6 weeks on, 3 weeks off, you see the same end result. And that, my friends, is where I love recovery weeks. So as I mentioned earlier, your cardiorespiratory will start to decrease. So you want to make sure that you are continuing to do your aerobic training. That's your walking. You can even do some running, whatever you enjoy, but you want to make sure you keep up that cardio training because research does show a reduction in that between 1 and 2 weeks. Now, you might experience a slight decrease in performance or endurance when you get back into working out, but it is often temporary and regained really easily. Our muscles have memory. And once you have done strength training, that muscle memory has actually been shown to still be there 15 years later. Our bodies are so resilient. So don't be afraid of recovery weeks and don't be afraid of your recovery days. And if you need any help with a structured program with that built-in recovery, I will include a link in the show notes so that you can try it for free and see if it serves your body well. I'm also going to link up all of the research in the show notes.